welcome everyone. I'm Jen Arey, Special Needs Navigator for the Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey, and this is JAA Your Way. And I'm here today with Kristina Peterson from Interactive Kids. She's an educational and behavioral consultant. And I'm also here with Jessica St. Petery. She's a BCBA with Interactive Kids as well. Welcome.
Hi, Jen.
Hey.
Thanks so much for having us today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. This is going to be a really great webinar. I'm really excited to tell everybody some more about ABA therapy and what it is and how it can help your kiddos. I know for myself, my boys have had ABA therapy for about 4 years, and it's made such a huge difference in our lives, and I can't wait to share that with families.
We're happy to share.
Great. So I think we should just really start at the beginning. Can you tell everyone what is ABA therapy?
ABA therapy is, it stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis Therapy, and it's based on the science of applying learning theory to behaviors and how people learn, and it's applied in the home setting and school setting, and we actually use ABA in everyday life. Okay,
great. So basically, from what I remember with my kids, that an ABA therapist would come in or BCBA would come in, and I would be having behavioral problems with my kids, maybe some meltdowns, temper tantrums, maybe it was really challenging to get them out the door for school in the morning. And you guys kind of swept in and came up with some plans for us and were incredibly helpful. So I think, can you give us some more examples of what some of the behaviors are that you guys commonly help with?
We mostly work with students who may be on the autism spectrum, who have a diagnosis of ADHD, OCD, children who have executive functioning problems.
Typically kids with ADHD, kind of like what Jess said, a lot of our kids might be inflexible, might have poor planning strategies. These are the kids that typically just kind of need that intervention for us to come in and say, hey, you're doing it this way, but maybe we can learn how to be flexible in order to learn how to do it a different way. So that's typically, our kids that we like to help out and see.
Absolutely. Now, I hear executive functioning challenges or executive functioning thrown around a lot. And a lot of folks actually, I don't think are very clear on what that means. Can you tell us more about what is executive functioning?
Sure, absolutely. So executive functioning really are those mental skills that are necessary for planning, organization. They help us with being flexible. And a lot of the times our kiddos, really have a slower executive functioning processing. So they might be the kids that might be, they want to be first. They want to not see anything anybody else's way. They may actually move slower than everybody else. These are the kids that are disorganized. They could start something and kind of lose their way and forget what they've originally, set out to do. So those are our kids that we're really looking at.
Okay, so my son, who might be putting the dishes away out of the dishwasher, and this is a true story, folks, putting dishes away in the dishwasher, takes a plate and walks into the bathroom. And I look at him and go, hey, bud, what are you doing? And he says, I'm putting the dishes away. And I'm like, really? And he goes, oh, yeah. And he comes back out of the kitchen and puts it away.
I mean, that could absolutely happen. So if you go into the bathroom and there's plates in there, you could probably know who was putting dishes away that time and maybe saw that they lost their train of thought. So that's absolutely something that could happen. That's kind of what we're looking at, that we just kind of lose a sense of what our initial plan was, of what we were originally set out to do.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I know for a fact that his backpack is like a black hole. Things go in there to die. And you can never find his homework. He can't find his lunch. He can't find anything. So that's definitely falls in the realm of executive functioning.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the times, and organization skills are a big part of it. So whether we're at home and we're making sure that everything has a place and we know where it goes, or if we're at school, and just knowing that simple coordination technique of like reading folder is red, map folder is green, those are strategies that when we're working with kids with executive functioning, are really, really helpful for them. Those visuals and those just consistent routines are really helpful for our kids with executive functioning.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to let's play pretend here for a minute. We're going to rewind the clock back to when my kids were younger. And so I'm a parent. I don't know what ABA therapy is. I don't know how this process works. Somebody told me it can be really helpful for some of the problems that we're experiencing at home. So I call you up, or I walk in the door and I say, I think I need you guys. What's next? What do we do? So can you walk me through the process of getting set up with ABA therapy and how that all works?
Sure. Do you want me to start? Okay. So when we're looking at setting up services for ABA, typically what we would want to do is we would want to start with just an interview with the parents, having you come in, get to know what's going on, and get a sense for what is going on. Talk about the different doctors, talk about the different things that you've gone through with so far, what your behavioral concerns are, if there's any educational components. I.e., a lot of parents are concerned that sometimes issues are surfacing in school, and that's very stressful because when you're navigating and you're learning about applied behavioral analysis or ABA services, there's some helpful things that we can also help you with in order to bridge those gaps and to just kind of deepen your understanding of how the scope and sequence of services can be applied. So we would want to come in and do an interview with the parents, meet your kiddo, because that's probably one of the most amazing first parts about applied behavioral analysis, because our clients or the kids that we work with truly it's an individual process. So while we have children with autism, we know that no two kids are the same. So getting to know those kids and the families is probably one of the very first things that we initially start with.
We would do record reviews and look at their IEPs, look at diagnoses, how was the pregnancy, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We would also look at any behavioral issues. We have assessments that we would do with you, just interview assessments that we would do, and also part of meeting the client or the child, we would also look at what would be appropriate for the child through the assessment part. Lots of observations and lots of data collection is what we would take.
Can you give some examples of when you say you go in and observe the child and you observe the family and what's going on and you're taking data? Can you give our family some examples of what kind of things you're looking for, what kind of behaviors you're looking for?
Okay. Anything that is problematic to the family, anything that is disrupting their daily functioning are behaviors that we would look at.
Another really important factor is that we also look at the age of the child when they're coming in. Generally, we like to do both a home and an office visit so we could see what the child's like in their natural environment and see what's going on within their household, but also see if those things are also surfacing within other environments that the child might visit. A couple of things that I always like to think about is we like to play with our younger kids. We might have a 2.5 or 3-year-old that come in and we just see what skills that they have. Just having those initial minutes with the kids, do they have joint attention, meaning do they look at us? Do they interact with us? Do they have any verbal language? How are they having their needs and wants? How are they expressing those things? So even within that brief that interaction, we get to see if those skills are prevalent within this child and if those skills are delayed or not. So that's just looking at a very younger individual with starting off with that initial interview assessment period. And of course, that scope and sequence looks different as the child moves up within the age scale, still looking at those adolescent skills. If they're like our 2nd to 5th graders, what skills do they have? What interests do they have? Those are really important things because that social emotional piece and those social skills are something that our kids at sometimes can lack, and we want to see where we can put interventions in place in order to bridge those gaps that they need to be filled.
For our older clients, we might look at vocational skills. How are their adaptive living skills at home? Are they able to complete their daily tasks independently? How much assistance do they need? If it's an individual who may be aging out of the school district, we may be looking at what type of job training can we provide for the student.
so every milestone, every developmental, age and whatnot, you're looking at really what's appropriate, what should that individual have for skills, and how should they be interacting with people in their everyday world.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned social skills, and I think just like executive functioning, we hear that a lot. It's kind of one of those buzzwords in the special needs community. Can you give us more in-depth information on what are social skills and why should we have them?
Social skills, in the way we would look at it is, does the student have joint attention? That would be the first thing that we would look for. And that is basically, does the student or child want to share an experience with an adult or another person?
Okay.
And so that we would look for referencing, saying, look, and looking at you and wanting you to look at that thing. That's what joint attention would be. We would also look for social reciprocity. Do they initiate conversations with others, especially their peers? A lot of the students that we are servicing, they are very adult-oriented. They're used to interacting with adults. Adults are more understanding if there's possibly a delay with their responses and more patient. So we look for them to be interacting with their peers, and are they able, those basic skills, like are they able to share? What level of play are they on? Are they cooperative play, parallel play? Things like, do you have it?
I also like to ask parents, and even like to observe during the times for social skills that we're a part of, is how much interest does the child have in socially engaging with other people? I mean, a lot of the times as adults, we have that choice. No, I don't feel like answering the phone, or no, I don't want to do this. But a lot of the times we have to look at what is that interest level for the child and what does that mean for them? What is that quality of interaction that they want? And again, looking at that scope and sequence from 2 all the way up to 21 years old, plus it looks differently for everybody. So when we look at social skills, depending on the developmental age, we want to assess what is appropriate for those ages at that time. And I think it's really fun because in this sense, when we look at the social skills, a lot of our kids have a lot of interesting, dynamic ways that when they actually get a chance to interact with each other, it's really, really cool because they just kind of go, oh, well, I like that too. And they never really realized that, they could have that connection with somebody else. And it's really, really nice to see. But looking at those deficits, sometimes they do come through because a lot of our kids, that flexibility part, learning how to play a game with other people, learning to see others' viewpoint, kind of being able to just problem solve with other kids, those skills are sometimes underdeveloped. So what we want to do is we want to bridge that gap. And we like to do so through fun developmental ways that we either would directly teach those skills or we would do more like a simulated arena of different activities. So we're basically providing the opportunity to give those teachable moments and fill those gaps in. So social skills can be a whole range of different things depending on the skills in the child's developmental age. So.
Absolutely. So with my kids, we, like I said, have had ABA therapy for 4 years. Involves a lot of game playing.
Yes.
We have quite an extensive game collection just to try to keep things interesting and fun instead of playing the same, Candyland or Chutes and Ladders or whatever 5 million times. So
they never get old.
No, they never get old. But I know for our kids, it was things like compromising. Well, I want to play Monopoly. Well, I want to play, Chutes and Ladders or whatever. And then they have to come up and negotiate. Okay, well, we'll do this first this time. And then next time we'll play your game first.
Absolutely.
And so things like that were stuff that we worked on. Not getting frustrated when you lose or somebody answers the question before you do, or you get frustrated in a game and you decide you're going to throw the pieces across the room or storm
Absolutely.
off,
Those are things that we have witnessed, we have worked with, and they are real life scenarios that, when you think you're by yourself as a parent or a teacher, those are things that actually happen and, frequently.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's difficult because in this sense, you really have to, know the child in that sense to understand that this is where they are and this is the deficit. It's not necessarily that they're doing this on purpose, but they don't have that social skill or that social emotional piece in order to understand how to figure out this emotion and this feeling. And instead of saying, I don't want to play anymore or something simple, Jen, a lot of times that translates into the game gets whooshed or pieces might fly behind you. And you have to realize that that's that gap that needs to be taught instead of thinking that this is something that the child is doing intentionally to us. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, those are things that happen.
Yep.
Yeah, they happened a lot, especially in the early days for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we worked a lot on conversation skills, having that reciprocal conversation where you have that back and forth communication where, you say something and then I might respond with a question or ask for more detail or say, oh yeah, I know about that. Mm-hmm. This is what happened to me. Those kinds of skills too, we worked on quite a bit as well. And that's all part of that social skill training.
It is. Mm-hmm. And that's so hard because a lot of the times, I can think about my youngest to some of the older kids, even that first exchange, hey, how are you doing? I'm good. And then the conversation kind of doesn't go any further. Teaching how to have an on-topic conversation and keeping that going is sometimes a very difficult skill for our kids to have. So absolutely, conversation skills and just making sure they're staying on topic. And, we could be talking about what movie we saw, and then all of a sudden it might change to, hey, have you ever seen a purple unicorn before? And you're like, nope, we're going to stay with the movies we were talking about or the topic we were on. Those are things that we, try to foster and maintain and try to have them stay on topic with us.
And you just reminded me that a lot of our students, our clients that we serve, they are only interested in their topics or their interests. So that is another behavior that we will see, trying to teach them that not everybody wants to talk about Paw Patrol. Maybe we could broaden the scope there. And not every conversation has to be redirected to a topic that you choose to talk about.
Yeah, it's like on Big Bang Theory, and everybody knows Sheldon, and Sheldon has his little quirks, and he loves trains. Yep. And his girlfriend, Amy, on numerous occasions, to keep his interest in her, will do things like dress up like Harry Potter because that was another interest of his, or was it the TARDIS? She brought the TARDIS home to keep him entertained and happy, so that he would talk to her. So yeah, I definitely get that. Our kids definitely perseverate and fixate on their favorite topics, and it's hard to get them to kind of branch out from there.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, that is something that commonly we do see is that kids do have certain preferences for things that they like, and it's very hard to get them to kind of stray and pick up different things or even try new things for that matter, just to kind of branch out and experience different things. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Definitely. So if we go back to our example where we have, here I am, I've just walked in to meet with you guys. We've started the data collection and the assessments. We've done the interviews. What's next? What's the next step?
So again, if we could just pop back to just that developmental, looking at how old they are developmentally, what the needs are, something that we might recommend is maybe if we're looking at a 2 to 3 year old, looking at intensive services, because as we know, the sooner the services start, the better off we are, because early intervention really is, so important. There's so many skills that we could start front loading at those earlier years. So depending on what we see within the assessments in our interview, we might say, hey, we have a center-based program that provides intensive therapy where we could look at an educational component as well as a behavioral component and see what we could do to bridge and put those, fill those gaps in. We might look at that. Another thing that we want to also do is make sure that we're just targeting in just any skills that we need intensively within that center that we may not be able to do within the home. And having that flexibility with our younger little learners is always amazing. If we're looking at our older children and they're already school-aged, we might say, hey, we're going to come into the home. We might be able to provide services for your child within the home. Jess, do you want to just kind of go a little bit more into that, what that kind of looks like?
So typically, our home services would be, you would get a BCBA who would be overseeing the program and writing the program. And it's all individualized, how we pick our goals and set up the program. And with that, we would make a decision collaboratively with the parents on frequency of services and intensity of services. Typically, we hold services after school hours, so that 4 to 7 o'clock range or 3 to 7 o'clock range. And so with your BCBA, that would be the person who's overseeing the program, but we would have a behavior technician who would come out and be the person who is there most frequently and who is putting into place the program and also who is working directly with your child, who's, putting into place the behavior plan and stuff like that.
So really, if we're looking, Jen, just to circle back, we conduct the interviews, the assessments, and then we evaluate in home, in the center, just to see what we could do. And if you're somebody walking in off the street, Jess just kind of took us through the process that typically that's how we would build a program for our home services or for home services if, you're looking to have needs met within the house that you really need some intervention with for the behavioral component piece of it.
So how do you decide what to target first for behaviors? How do you decide, we're going to work on this skill and then we'll work on this other thing, later? How do you make those decisions?
Well, it's all individualized again. We have assessments that we perform on the students. Typically for a younger learner, we would look at maybe the VB MAP, which is the Verbal Behavioral Milestones and Assessment Placement Program. And that is a language-based program. And so when you say behaviors, we think of behaviors as deficits as well. So, the student may be engaging in some maladaptive behaviors, but we also address their deficits, their skill deficits, communication deficits, any pre-academic skills that the student maybe have a deficit in. And we will build the program based on their needs. As our clients get older, we also have assessments that assess their functional living skills. Where do they land in that assessment? How can we address skills that they need? Where are their deficits? That's how we would build the program.
Okay. When you say maladaptive behaviors, what does that mean?
Any behaviors that would be interfering with their functioning. So like aggression, disruptive behavior, yelling, screaming, crying, whining, tantrums, things like that. Aggression could be hitting. It could be pulling hair, property destruction, kicking, things like that we would see.
Self-injurious behavior. Sometimes some of our learners who don't have functional communication, could engage in self-injurious behavior, such as hitting themselves or banging their heads against surfaces. These are things that, we've seen that when there are deficits with communication, one way to communicate would be to engage in a behavior, and it kind of brings everybody together and say, hey, what's going on? And those are things that we look at during those times.
I know sometimes not only does positive attention and praise motivate our kiddos, but sometimes that negative attention too, when they do something naughty and they're getting yelled at, or they might be, might make their sibling cry or things like that, can also be something that they want too. And
Right.
those are some behaviors that you would work on trying to change.
Yes, yeah. And with those types of behaviors, attention-seeking behaviors, we as behavior analysts and part of the assessment process, we do look at how, what we call the functions of behavior. So how is the behavior functioning for the child, or what is the pattern of behavior? So there are 4 different functions that applied behavioral analysis has identified for anyone to engage in behaviors. And attention seeking is one. There's sensory, which could be the person is engaging in the behavior for sensory input. It could be maybe you might see it as hand flapping or shaking your leg, something that we typically do, tapping your pen. We're looking for some sensory input. There's also escape maintain behaviors. So that might be the person doesn't want to do what you're asking them to do, or they don't want to be in the place that you're asking them to be. They may engage in that behavior to get out of there or to get away from the demand. And the last one is tangible, and that is the person's engaging in the behavior to get access to something, such as a toy or an activity.
Would that be maybe like the meltdown in the grocery store because you want that candy bar?
Exactly.
And if they had that fit long enough, they know mom or dad or whoever they're with is going to cave in because they're tired of hearing them yell and fuss and scream.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's exactly true. Yes.
I think
we've all been there.
I was just going to say, I think we've all been through that one before.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me to another question that I always find very interesting is, we have temper tantrums. Everybody at some point in their life is going to have a temper tantrum. Mm-hmm. And I won't tell you exactly when my last one was, but but for our kiddos, especially our ones on the autism spectrum, they also have autism meltdowns. What would the difference be between a regular temper tantrum that anybody would have and an autism meltdown?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it depends on the individual. A person with autism may have sensory overload, or they may just not be able to communicate at that time what their wants and needs are. So it might heighten. It could be the end of a very hard day for them. They may have been hit with a lot of obstacles, or they may have been keeping it together in school. And that when they get at home, that's when they fall apart.
That's the safe place, and that's when all of those things come out.
Right. We hurt the ones we love, right? So that's where it might be different for a person with autism versus a typical person having a tantrum behavior.
And also, just to kind of add to a little bit to that, sometimes when we look at the difference between the two, we also look at coping skills and the ability to vocalize and to tell somebody what's wrong, what's going on, and why we're having this tantrum. So when we look at, a typical developing child having a tantrum, it may not be so far off as to what's going on with a child with autism, because really coping skills aren't necessarily always developed in our typical developing children. Sometimes you find there's inconsistencies. So sometimes those tantrums can be just a tantrum, same as having a child with autism. We really, really want to look at typical developing children as well and say, is this so different from what's going on? And if it is, what steps do we need to take in order to teach coping skills, to teach that functional communication, to let them know, hey, this can get you the same thing that this tantrum is really kind of serving that purpose that you're doing right now. We want to look at those skills too.
And that just reminded me that some of our children with autism, they may not have the ability to accept no or to wait for something. Whereas a typical child, you might say, you can't have it right now, but you can have it later. Or, you can't have this thing, but you can have this thing or this thing. And they might be okay with that. But a child with autism may not understand that those contingencies are there and available to them.
Having that flexibility, cognitive thinking is something that it's not easy. And sometimes we do see those tantrums because they don't know how to cope with that, no. It's like a finite no. And that's kind of what they see. They don't understand there would be an opportunity later. So we would want to go in and teach them how to accept that.
It's interesting with my two boys. They both have autism, and I frequently use them as examples. But they both do the escape behaviors that you mentioned, and they do them in very different ways. In fact, extremely different ways, but it's funny that it's both escape behaviors. For example, my youngest, you think that he's lying, and that's a big problem that we're trying to communicate to his teachers. It's like, no, he's not lying. This is an escape behavior that he does, because he'll tell his teacher, oh yeah, I did that already, because he wants to go to break time, or he wants to leave the classroom, or he wants to do whatever the next thing is, and he doesn't want to go back and have to redo it. And
Sure.
So his default answer is whatever he thinks the teacher wants him to say, and that will get him out, and he'll escape from having to do that task. Whereas my oldest, he would sit on the couch and he would completely shut down. He wouldn't talk to you, he wouldn't look at you, he would just lay there like a lump, and we would get no response out of him at all. So both escape behaviors, but
They
in
look
very
different.
different ways.
Right.
Absolutely. So that's not uncommon, and that's one of the things that we commonly see. And just like I know I'd mentioned before, the way that it looks may not be the same for every child. So there's not really a textbook, this is what escape looks like, and this is what attention-seeking behaviors look like. And that's where that observation and that intervention comes in place. Observations are key for us because, when we get to see those behaviors or those antecedents, sometimes what happens right before that behavior occurs, that helps us to really drive our intervention. Because if we see, for instance, your son coming in, oh, he's going to tell us everything we want. I'm going to have to go in and check those things before he gets to have access to what he wants, because this is his behavior. He typically tells me he's done with everything before he gets to do those things. So behavior never looks the same with two kids. And that's what we really, really want to make sure that we assess when we go in. So direct observation really helps to drive intervention strategies and how we build those interventions for each child.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, because it blew me away when our BCBA said, oh, they're both doing escape behaviors. And I'm like, what do you mean escape behaviors? That doesn't make any sense. My youngest, he's not escaping. He's just not telling me the truth. And she's like, no, that's escape behavior. And it was a very interesting lesson for me as a parent to learn.
And sometimes I think I almost find that some kids can be very sophisticated with the way that things look and the way that they've learned to maintain and use those behaviors. And it feels like as they get older, because it's worked for them for so long, their craft kind of refines itself and it becomes very savvy looking. Kind of like where you said, your son didn't want to get off the couch and he knew the second he turned it off, that was it. These are things that we look at and say, hey, this is really what's happening. Let's see what we could do to make this more functional. Let's teach another behavior so this is a little bit more functional instead of allowing them to continue to escape from what we want them to do. I mean, I know for me, my daughter would do the same thing if I asked her to clean her room. All of a sudden, there's no response. And I go, no, wait, this is what's happening. We got to get these things done. And just prompting them through those things is very, is one of the things that we do.
Yeah, it was a lot easier when he was little and like 2 years old, wore overalls. And the great thing was the overalls provided a ready-made handle. Because you could kind of pick them up by the back of the overalls and move them where you needed to move them. And, they could be screaming and kicking and you're just like, yep, nope, we're going to go over here.
Very helpful.
It's very hard to do when they're, a couple 100 pounds and a teenager.
Sure.
And
that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it's so important, like you said, when they're younger to help them develop these skills, and to also recognize their patterns of behavior so that we can intervene at an early age instead of it being a 5 or 10 year pattern of behavior. It's maybe 1 year pattern of behavior. So that's, we were stressing the point of early intervention and getting these services as early as you can.
And Jess makes a really, really good point. And a lot of the times when we look at patterns of behavior, a year with having that pattern of behavior is at times a little bit easier to work with than when we have 5 to 10 to 15 years of a pattern of behavior that has been consistently done. Because a lot of times that history is really what we're looking at breaking. And sometimes when we have that long time period, it is more difficult to provide intervention. So, again, circling back, that those early intervention years are really important because we would target those skills. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, we could pick up a 2-year-old, but they don't stay 2 forever. We have to think about that long haul of what they're going to look like when they get, what our kids look like when they get older, and what is this going to look like? Mm-hmm. So,
but on the other hand, it's never too late to shape behavior and change behavior. So don't be discouraged if it's been a while. You're just learning about ABA services and your child is a little older. It's never too late.
Yeah, we did come to it late. Mm-hmm. Both of my boys were, in early teens, and it still made a huge impact mm-hmm. on them and on our lives. And I think a big piece of it was the parent training, because I love you guys, but I don't want you to live with me, and I'm sure you don't want to move in either. Although sometimes it felt like our BCBA did live with us, mm-hmm. And we joked when we bought our new house that we were going to look for a 4th bedroom for her. But that's probably not the goal. So parent training is a really big component of that. Can you tell us more about why we do parent trainings and what the goals are with that?
Right. So part of the assessment process in the beginning, when we develop a plan for the child and program development, we always write parent goals. And our goal with that is to be able to equip the parents, because like you said, we can't be there 24/7. Equip the parents to be able to handle this and empower the parents to be able to handle their child. A lot of times we're coming into a situation where a parent might feel worn out. They might feel defeated, just stressed out because they're living this every day. And part of our job is to go in and empower the parents, equip them with the tools that they need to show them the student's pattern of behavior so that they can help their child to overcome these issues. And it really impacts the whole family, mm-hmm. For the parents to be able to have these tools and strategies to help their child, because it's going to make your life go a lot smoother, and you're going to see gains in your child. And another goal with our parent training is for us to be able to fade back. We don't want to have to be there all the time, because we're not going to be there all the time for you guys.
Yeah, it's just not practical.
Right.
And it was really fascinating for me, from my personal experience, was that we learned certain things that we were doing were actually either encouraging the behaviors to continue, or giving him that negative attention or that reward or that feedback that he was looking for. And knowing from myself how I could change how I was intervening and how I was handling different situations was really very effective and very helpful.
And we, as behavior analysts, sometimes, like you said, you don't realize as a parent that you're, we call it reinforcing the behavior, which is, increasing the likelihood it'll occur again. Having another set of eyes on the situation as part of our observation just helps the parents to realize, no, this is the pattern of behavior. And also, sometimes behaviors can serve multiple functions for a child, and it's hard to determine that maybe every time your son is on the couch, is it always escape behavior? Is it sometimes he's looking for attention? So it's great to have another set of eyes on this, the situation and what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I want to be very clear, though, to our families, when we talk about parent trainings, it's not a criticism or a critique of your parenting style or how you're raising your child. These are just strategies to help you have, a more positive interaction, and everybody just to kind of be able to function as a family better.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a really, really good point, Jen, because having that rapport and that relationship with your child is very important. And a lot of the times we don't realize, and us as parents, we don't realize some of the things that, we do and we go through. And sometimes it's kind of like that aha moment, because a lot of the families that I work with, they are like second families to me. And it's more of a collaborative, this is a team, we're here to work together. It's never meant to be a criticism. And a lot of the time, some of the parents that we come across just say, I just don't know what to do. I keep on doing these things and it's not changing. And sometimes just having that fresh perspective saying, well, if it's not changing anything, let's take a look to see what's going on, because maybe we do need to do something different. And we're here as a partner to help. It's very hard because I know that as a parent personally, I have been somewhere where I have said, oh my goodness, where do I go from here? And just having that other person there to tell me, hey, change the way you're doing this. This is going to be more helpful. They were right. It was just that moment where sometimes you just need that perspective. So
yeah, definitely, because with our kiddos, especially our ones with autism, it can really be a struggle. And the normal big guns that we pull out, when you get that bad grade at school, and you're going to put you on restriction, or you're grounded for the weekend. Those can actually make the behaviors so much worse. And so learning those new strategies and those tips and how to do things is really just such a huge help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always said that changing my behavior was also something that needed to happen as a parent. If my behavior wasn't helping my child's behavior to change, I had to look at what I was doing, and it made a difference. So sometimes it takes two to change the way that we look at the patterns of behavior.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that we really haven't touched on, we've been talking a lot about behavior therapy at home and in the home environment. What about at school? Is there a way that somebody could get maybe some behavior services at school? How does that work?
Yes, it's all individualized, of course. And the best way for a parent to approach that would be to talk to their child study team member about behavioral services and their interest in behavioral services, and work as a team for that. We at Interactive Kids do school consultation for our clients, and it's based on the district and what they provide for each student who may be classified or, on their way to classification. So, talk to your child study team member and see what your school district offers.
Wonderful. And would it be possible, or is it typical for, say I have you for home services, if we needed to come up with a behavior plan for school, is that something that you would be able to work collaboratively with the child study team to develop?
Certainly, yes. And even if your child study team has a behavior analyst on board, I would have the team meet and collaborate on, what the issues are and how we can create a plan that will work for the student and the school district.
Fantastic. I think one more thing that I had a question on, and it kind of relates to the same sort of topic. You have the in-home services you have at school. We're getting that taken care of. But what about the times when we're out in the community? How do we handle those social situations when we're maybe at the library or we're at the grocery store? How do you guys work to address some of those?
So starting with again, I always like to go through the continuum. So a lot of the times, in order to look at what needs or whatever needs we're looking for when we're in the community, what is the norm for that place we're going to? So a lot of the times what we like to do is say we're going to the library. I might sit with my kids and sit with my parents and say, hey, we're going to the library. We're going to teach you what the behavior looks like when we go to the library or when we go to the grocery store. And we would go through the different, we are quiet. What does a quiet voice look like in the library? A lot of the times we like to train our parents and we like to teach the kids what is acceptable within those different environments. So when we go out into the community, we might go with the parents and we might go with the children and say, hey, we're going to go try this today. So we're going to pre-teach those skills. Well, we're going to a library. We're quiet. We're going to look for books. How many books should we look for? We kind of set almost like a schedule for the kids so they know what's going on. We know that this is predictable. As soon as we pick out our books, we're going to go out and do the checkout section so they can know and they can anticipate all the steps that would be within that community outing. A lot of the times I have kids who are impatient in Target, Walmart, the grocery store. They kind of want to get done and through everything. I tell the parents one of the great ways that we could, have them help you be more interactive is give the child the shopping list, give them the highlighter, have them go through and cross off the items on that list so that way they know what's going on, where they're at in their grocery shopping, and they know that they're getting towards the bottom of the list, which alleviates them asking us, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Or getting upset that they just want to be finished and they can't predict when that's going to happen. So just familiarizing our children with, what is to be anticipated. YouTube is one of the great things out there where you can actually do and show the different environment and point different things out. So using different teaching techniques is a really helpful way to be out in the community. Now, with that being said, I know that during the times out in the community, I know that I used to call them spectacular moments. We would have fits, we would have tantrums, and those problem behaviors can surface within the community setting. So a lot of the times, if those things happen, we want to take a look at what's happening right before that behavior occurs and then work with the families to develop a plan to work through those difficult times. Because a lot of the times our small ones, just like the candy aisle, and for some reason our kids seem to be the loudest ones and nobody else is crying in the store except for our children. So a lot of those times we want to look at what happened and then come back and develop a plan with the families and work with them and support them during those times that may be difficult, because we want our families to be able to get out, to function in public, to have the kids function in public, and it be a positive experience, not like I'm going to the grocery store, I'm dreading this week, I know I have to go. We don't want that dread to come. So we want to give you guys, again, the parent training tools to go out and be successful with your kids.
And part of the community outings is part of your home services. Mm-hmm. So that's how you would access that.
That's fantastic. I think my last question is going to be, in order to get services, is it dependent on having a diagnosis?
Yes.
Currently, right now, usually most of our clients do have an autism diagnosis. We do have other parents that do come in to us for other services such as social skills and counseling. And again, that would be depending on your insurance provider. But looking at right now, currently for ABA services, autism is
the diagnosis that qualifies for ABA services.
Okay, so as always, I tell all my families that diagnosis is not something that you should fear. It's actually something you should welcome, because it gives you access to wonderful services like ABA therapy that can really help your home life, help school life, your everyday life, just really improve, and behaviors and the overall functioning of your family just to improve. So it's really, it's like your golden ticket. So I encourage families to definitely make sure they get that diagnosis.
And I mean, Jen, with that being said, ABA services does benefit other children. We do have children that have social emotional needs. We have children with ADHD that come to our center. So it's not necessarily just autism.
And there's comorbid diagnoses too, that some children may have that benefit from ABA services, such as OCD. That might be something that that rigid inflexibility. ABA can help them with that too.
Absolutely, but they would still need to have that diagnosis first and show medical necessity for insurance to be able to pay for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Well, and any other information that you'd like to, leave our parents with before we wrap up?
So, I think what Jen said is really key. Don't be afraid of the diagnoses. The more pieces that we put together at an earlier stage, or even later on, if that is what kind of happens, is really important information. And these are tools and things that, as a family, you can use to guide that intervention if you need that for your children. And just know ABA is a partnership. It's a great intervention tool to use with your family, all the way around.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chris and Jessica. It's
Thank
been a
you.
real pleasure having
Thank you for having us.
And I hope our families benefit from this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.